Hello, hello! I am trying something new here with a vlog because I thought it might be easiest to talk about my PAX Unplugged experiences this way, rather than just writing it out or tweeting about it. First off, I spent most of my time in the Unpub area where a lot of people were. It was pretty much just hopping the entire time. So I'm very thankful for anybody who stopped by my table and played some of the games that I had brought. What games were those? Well, the big one was Flying Taxi. Now, this is a big, giant, three-dimensional game that certainly had a lot of table presence and I think maybe helped draw people in. The idea of the game is that you are a flying taxi driver picking up passengers and delivering them all across the city on rooftops, and you are being chased by drones that are controlled by the player on your left. The idea was that you would take multiple jumps, and each time you jumped, the player on your left would have access to all of the movement templates that you have used up to that point, thereby making the drones that much more dangerous because they're just much more flexible the further on you go. A little bit of a push your luck element. If any player who was active during that turn, either the driver or the drone operator, had any tendency towards analysis paralysis, it would just lengthen that turn a little bit too much. Now, it felt fun to be able to move and dodge and move and dodge, kind of controlling the drones as you went, but the trade-off of downtime for every player who was not involved in that exchange wasn't really worth it, unfortunately. It was cool to feel clever, but we ultimately needed to focus attention on the entire table. So the biggest change to the game was that we took that multi-step turn that you could take into just a simple one-step turn. That sped things up quite a bit, so I'm pretty pleased with how that turned out. The next game that I tested a lot was Sprightly, another co-design, this time a co-design with Graham Russell, who is also a member of the Game Designers of North Carolina. You may have seen an early version of this called Pixel Factory, and we kind of let it rest for about a year or so before returning with kind of fresh eyes and streamlining a significant portion of the gameplay. And ultimately we just acknowledge that we are small game designers, so we like to make small games. It's our main skill set. And while it was interesting to try to make a big game, ultimately we decided to focus on our strengths. So we made Pixel Factory a much smaller, tighter game called Sprightly. And in that game, we strictly focus on collecting pixels that would be colored cubes and assembling them onto cards that depict classic sprites from classic video games. So now we have to go back to spreadsheets, and Graham's going to be working on a lot of development on getting sprites that are just about right for various player counts. And I think it'll turn out really, really well. I was very pleased with how it turned out. Everyone really enjoyed it, and hopefully we get some publishers looking at that very soon. The other game that I tested was not Junk Orbit specifically. It's a promo pack for Junk Orbit that I am tentatively calling Cruise Control because it introduces cruise, a little bit of a pun. So each of the cards that are added in the promo pack would either be a crew member who gives you an ongoing ability, or a tourist who doesn't give you any abilities but wants you to achieve certain things in the game. It's an interesting promo pack. I quite like it. It still needs a little bit of tweaking and fine-tuning, but hopefully with further development it'll be ready for print at some point next year. That is the goal. I also brought along a copy of the Chinese edition of Monsoon Market. There's a publisher in particular that I had in mind for this. This is a game that I have had in my catalog on Drive-Thru Cards for quite a while. So far, it's only ever been officially retail published in China. That's why you get all this Chinese text on the box and stuff. So it was kind of funny. I had to bring my Chinese edition because I didn't have a print edition in English. Fortunately, the game is mostly language neutral, so I could talk over how to play the game without having to refer to any of the Chinese text that was on the cards, which there's a little bit of, but not too much. And thankfully, the publisher was interested, so I left that copy behind with them. I also brought along a copy of a new game that I had been working on for a little while called Astronauts, but that could be a working title. It may also be called Countdown or T-Minus, I'm not exactly sure. It's a deck of cards that I had made a long time ago that I never really found a game for. I found that I could make a 54 card deck that was numbered from 1 through 99 by making every double-digit number reversible. So a 21 could be a 12, And if there were a single digit number, then I could just make that 0, 1 and have that reverse to 10. The basic idea is that you're a tour director, a docent, who is managing a bunch of space tourists that are floating out in orbit in spacesuits that have gotten loose, they've gone wandering off, and you have to kind of herd them back. Each of the astronauts is numbered, and you're trying to tether all of the astronauts in numerical order, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Now, the big hook of the game is that when you take an astronaut from the central display and add it to your tether, you can reverse it to be up or down depending on what you need. So if the astronaut at the end of a tether is the number 12, you could attach the 13, or you could flip that around to be a 31 so that the next card could be a 32, for example. It's a bit brain burning, and you find yourself kind of flipping your brain up and down, up and down, up and down as you play. Overall, it's a very cool little puzzle game, and I'm quite pleased with it. I did pick up a couple of games at PAX. I don't normally shop too much at conventions, but the opportunities presented themselves. So I picked up this copy of Hatsuden, which I quite enjoyed. It is a two-player game where two players are competing to make these power lines that connect two cities. I would also put in the same category as, say, Battle Line or Hanami Koji. So if that gives you some context for what kind of game this is, hopefully that helps. I also picked up a copy of Arboretum, the new edition. I quite like the art. It's really good, and it's so pretty, and you know, it's a solid game for two players. Yeah, this was kind of a no-brainer. I really quite enjoyed it. This is a two-player trick-taking game that I was taught in a demo at the Renegade booth for about like 5 minutes. I played a quick game with a random person who happened to be standing there. And the volunteer who was demoing the game was also demoing Clank, and obviously Clank being the heavier game, she needed to frequently answer questions that were coming from that table. So with me having to be there for about an hour signing junk orbit boxes if the opportunity came up, I kind of wanted to be a little bit more useful, so I kind of went around the other side of the table and started demoing Fox in the Forest for like half an hour or so, and that was really fun. It felt useful, and that's ultimately what I try to be whenever I'm doing any kind of event or appearance or something. I just want to help. This was a lot of fun to demo it, and after demoing it a few times and enjoying every single game I played of it, this was also a very easy purchase for me. Hey, so my battery pack ran out in the camera. Did I mention that this is a very new thing for me? Yeah, sorry about that. Well, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who stopped by at the booth and at the table and just stopped me in the hallways to say that they had used the tutorials that I've posted on YouTube over the past couple years. I find it very gratifying to know that people are getting some use out of those. So thank you very much for sharing your stories of making your own prototypes. I hope it continues to be useful to you. But until next time, that'll be it for me.